25 miles west of the Salween River, a major obstacle to the linking of the Burma and Ledo roads is eliminated with the capture of Tengyueh. During the 6 weeks offensive, all supplies were flown over the hump from India and parachuted to the Chinese army. These pictures show the last days of the siege. Ammo is rushed in for the American-trained Chinese troops before Tengyueh. The fight for this ancient walled city in the Yunnan province climaxes months of campaigning in the rugged and rain-soaked mountains of southwestern China. Tengyueh, also known as Dongzhong, has a long history as a way station on the overland route into China. It early won fame as a prosperous trading center, a visit to which was recorded by Marco Polo. Opening fire on an enemy pillbox at the city's east gate. A camera equipped with telephoto lenses records the results. The Japs can be seen hurriedly deserting the position and running for cover. Planes operating out of bases in China and India support the ground troops. Dive bombers of the 10th and 14th American Air Forces attack heavily fortified enemy positions. Observing the bombing is the Chinese regimental commander, Colonel Gu Bian. Chinese infantrymen storm the battered walls. They scale the 30-foot barriers to reinforce positions inside Tengyueh. On 14th September, the remains of the Jap garrison of 4,000 are wiped out. Removing wounded Chinese soldiers. There are no Japanese wounded. The fanatical defenders forced those Jap wounded who were able to walk to fight for the city. Seriously wounded Jap troops were reported to have committed mass suicide. Tengyueh, occupied by the enemy for 2.5 years, has been reduced to a heap of rubble. Its fall enables the Chinese to regroup for a drive against last Jap strongholds, delaying completion of the land supply route from India across northern Burma into China. At the Burma terminus of the supply road, Myitkyina Strategic Air and Rail Junction is visited by Admiral Lord Louis Mountbatten. Among those greeting the Supreme Allied Commander is Brigadier General Louis A. Pick, in charge of Ledo Road construction. Also, Lieutenant General Sun of the Chinese Army. Lord Mountbatten inspects the points of siege in Myitkyina, which was captured after stubborn resistance during last summer's monsoon season. Next, a ride along the 30-mile jeep railway between Myitkyina and Bologna. The railway is now in complete operation. Supplies and troops are shuttled between the two North Burma bases. Chinese columns employing various modes of transportation follow the tracks to Mogong and back. These Chinese troops have fought long campaigns in waist-deep mud and through hazardous jungle terrain to help bring the Allies to the China-Burma frontier. 5th October, elements of General Mark Clark's Fifth Army, their progress hampered by heavy fall rains, reached the outskirts of the important communications center of Loiano. Loiano is occupied 7th October after hard fighting. The city of Loiano, wrecked by artillery fire and dive-bombing P-47s. New type combat clothes are issued to the Fifth Army men before they resume the advance to Bologna, 14 miles from Loiano. With this new winter issue, the troops are prepared for the cold, wet weather of the oncoming Italian winter. Seized German film photographed before Romania's capitulation showing damage done by Allied bombing to oil fields and processing units at Ploesti. King Michael I inspects the smoldering wreckage in the wake of the Allied strike. On 17th May alone, 1,500 heavy bombers and fighters flew northeast from Italy to attack the Axis oil center. Ruins of a Romanian airplane factory in the Ploesti region. Because of the strategic importance of the area, the Nazis had ringed installations with anti-aircraft guns of large and small caliber. In addition, interceptor aerodromes at key points and elaborate blast walls around vital sections of the plants were among German defenses. Railroad yards were subjected to precision bombing. Before Romanian entry into the war, the state railroad had 9,500 miles of track. Under Nazi pressure, main lines were double-tracked and feeder routes were constructed to speed supplies to Germany and to facilitate Eastern Front troop movements. Air Force's pictures of Lieutenant General Ira C. Aker and Major General Nathan F. Twining arriving at Bucharest on 14th September. They're on an inspection tour of the Mediterranean Allied Air Force targets, which their aircraft bombed repeatedly when the failure of Hitler's oil drives in the Caucasus and Middle East made the Nazis largely dependent on the oil resources of Ploesti. Concrete caissons weighing up to 6,000 tons, some mounting anti-aircraft guns, are towed across the English Channel to the Allied beachheads in Normandy. About 150 of the caissons, called Phoenixes, will form the breakwaters for 2 artificial deepwater harbors. This operation, shortly after D-Day, involves a total of 1,500,000 tons of prefabricated port construction units. 20 specially designed spud pier heads will form the wharves for the synthetic ports. The aim is to provide debarkation points off the French invasion coast where vessels can unload reinforcements and materiel in all weathers and tides at the highest possible speed. To link the pier heads with the shore, 20,000 feet of floating bridge units also are towed to Normandy. The combination of caisson breakwaters, flat steel ponton pier heads, and floating roadways represents the coordinated efforts of U.S. and British engineers. The plans for the project are British. American CBs handle much of the construction work. Construction of the 2 ports represents an expenditure of $100 million. At a predetermined location, 1,500 yards off the Normandy shoreline, the caissons are brought into position by American and British tugs. Under the direction of U.S. Navy crews, the Phoenixes are given proper alignment before they are sunk into final position. The job of towing this huge tonnage into French coastal waters is probably one of the greatest jobs of its type in history. The caissons are flooded and sunk until they rest on the channel bottom with upper parts protruding. The diagram shows the relation of the concrete breakwaters to the rise and fall of the tide. Thus, the artificial roadstead is formed to provide safe anchorage for coastwise vessels and landing ships lying in its lee. In addition, the breakwaters are augmented by lines of sunken ships, termed block ships. 300,000 tons of old Allied shipping are brought across the channel for this purpose. These Navy and Signal Corps films show how the ships are scuttled stem to stern, parallel with the beach. Their regular complement of anti-aircraft guns becomes a permanent part of the defenses of the artificial ports. Now the steel ponton pierheads are given proper placement inside the roadstead. Each corner of the pierhead is provided with a pile, driven down into the seabed. The pontons slide up and down the piles with the rise and fall of the tide. Unloading ramps are already in place for LSTs and other craft. Assembling the prefabricated sections that form the causeway. Many miles of the floating roadways lead out from the foreshore to the pierheads. The long piers are on floats because there's a 20-foot tide in this immediate sector. In less than 2 weeks, the artificial harbors begin to take final form. Each pierhead is in fact a ship, complete with crew quarters, generating sets, and storage accommodations. When the two artificial harbors are in complete operation, one will supply the American beachheads near Saint-Laurent-sur-Mer and the other the British beachheads near Arromanches. This completed causeway runs many hundreds of feet to the beach. The pierhead is ready for use. All that remain are finishing touches on the heavy-duty roadways leading to and from the floating causeway. One of the first LSTs to unload inside the American harbor. Units of the Port Inspection Corps operate the pierheads. Men and equipment of the infantry and Air Force comprise the cargoes. In addition to the LSTs, the Great Harbor also shelters depot and repair ships and a variety of other shipping. In addition to the customary unloading from the bow of an LST, the pierheads are constructed on 2 levels so as to permit simultaneous discharge of cargoes from the deck of the landing ship. The vehicles then ride down the ramps leading to the causeway. On 18th June at the Omaha beach, supplies were already pouring off the LSTs. The unloading rate was scheduled soon to be doubled, but the next day an unscheduled event occurred. An unseasonal gale, the worst in 80 years, hits the channel on the 19th. A 70-mile wind and roaring seas virtually destroy the American artificial harbor. The storm costs the Allies 5 days, during which time they cannot unload an ounce of supplies. Hundreds of ships are beached or wrecked. The unprecedented violence of the gale greatly exceeds the maximum stress for which any of the portable harbor equipment had been designed. Vast sections of the steel girder bridges undulate and break up under the strain. Even the big piers are swept away by the gigantic waves. According to a story given out by Admiral William Tennant of the U.S. Navy, The plans for D-Day included the choice of two dates, either the 6th or the 19th. If General Eisenhower had chosen the 19th, the storm of that date would have smashed the Allied invasion fleet of 4,000 ships. As it was, Admiral Tennant states, only strict rationing, heroic work by the Navy, and the capture of Cherbourg Harbor saved the Allied armies. Along the American breakwater, many of the caissons are wrecked or thrown out of line. Some of the block ships are badly damaged. Since the storm, the port has been patched up and made suitable for small boat refuge. The British port suffered comparatively light damage. It was spared because it was protected by a shoal which held the big waves off its sunken block ships and concrete caissons. All 7 British pierheads were in operation at the time these pictures were made late in July. A special LST pier has been constructed here in addition to the cargo pier. A high-level V-shaped ramp makes possible midships unloading from the decks of the LSTs. Leaving the pierhead, lines of tanks moved down the long causeway to join the battle beyond the beaches of Normandy. Some officers have called the 2-mile-long artificial harbor at Arromanches the 8th wonder of the world. October, somewhere in France, an ordnance crew inspecting a captured 88 fills and tests the recoil mechanism prior to firing the piece. The German 88 has proved itself very dangerous as both an anti-tank and anti-aircraft gun. Rommel's Africa Corps used it with devastating results against the British. The breech block of this weapon automatically opens as the shell is ejected. The German 88 officially joins the United States Army. Several of the famed guns were taken unused from a seized German railway car. The supply of captured ammo is almost unlimited. When volunteers were called for to test fire the 88s, an entire battalion asked for the chance. Long-range flamethrowers mounted on Bren carriers are tested as the Canadian 4th Armored Division prepares to force crossings over the Leopold Canal. From behind the protection of the near bank, the flames are projected about 100 yards. The purpose of the test was to determine whether troops would be able to cross in assault boats behind a screen of fire. On 8th October, tanks for the American First Army arrive near the front. They come in by the trainload to the rail junction town of Bastogne in southeastern Belgium. Tarpaulins and moorings are removed as the tanks end the journey from a coastal port. Ready to begin the last leg of the trip to the fighting lines. Bastogne is just adjacent to Luxembourg and less than 60 miles below General Hodge's embattled forces in the Aachen area. Planes of the Royal Air Force fly over the beleaguered port city of Brest to bomb the vital Nazi U-boat base. Aerial view of the submarine pens, highlighting direct hits by 12,000-pound earthquake bombs. These pictures were made since the fall of Brest, 20th September. Capitulation of the Nazi garrison ended a 4 years bombardment of its port installations by Allied bomber and coastal commands. Hundreds of tons were dropped during August alone. Loss of Brest not only cost the Nazis the most important U-boat base along the French coast, but also the most spacious anchorage in Europe. Interior of a U-boat pen, its roof pierced by one of the 12,000-pound bombs. Another pen, also a target for an earthquake bomb. A warning against smoking, printed in French as well as German, indicates the employment of French civilians by the Nazis. Aachen, Germany, where General Courtney Hodges' First Army awaits the reply to an ultimatum forwarded to the Nazi command 10th October. The ultimatum is rejected and hundreds of guns open fire on the encircled city. Closing in on Aachen, garrisoned by 1,500 Nazis, the majority of whom are SS troops. A portion of the garrison surrenders. Ages range from 13 to 60. Most of these are fresh from Berlin. Engineers remove the tracks from a rail line to provide a roadway. At this point in the fighting, enemy pillboxes still controlled all roads leading into the city. Aachen's annihilation continues according to the warning set forth in General Hodges' ultimatum, namely, surrender or complete destruction. On entering the wrecked city, infantrymen dig out the Nazis street by street, often moving only 10 feet at a time. Resistance in most cases is that of a single Nazi sniping from a cellar or attic. Left of the ancient Prussian city, reputed to be the birthplace of Charlemagne. Airmen at this time reported 85% of the city ruined. Remnants of the Nazi garrison surrender 20th October. Aachen's fall brings the total of prisoners taken by the First Army since D-Day to 194,374. Last of the German refugees to leave the ruined gateway to the Reich. According to prisoners, much of the civilian population and many soldiers of the garrison would willingly have surrendered, but the Nazi commander replied, even an American cannot ask a city like Aachen, where 37 German emperors were crowned, to surrender. The captured German town of Kalteherberg on the First Army front is temporarily evacuated as a military precaution against civilian aid to Nazi forces. This action was taken 8th October by the Allied military government after it was discovered that Nazi patrols infiltrated at night and received information from residents concerning American military movements. Military government police issue instructions to a small group left behind to take care of cattle and livestock. Evacuees arrive at a central point for transportation to Malmedy, Belgium. Kalteherberg is one of a group of 8 towns and villages ruled by a branch of the AMG with divisional headquarters in a nearby German city. AMG officers receive careful instructions on the treatment of civilian populations. A typical indoctrination class is shown in the following scenes photographed in Belgium.
We have been entrusted with the responsibility of setting up military government in the first areas of occupied Germany. As General Eisenhower has stated, we come as conquerors, but not as oppressors. We must see that our task, the eradication of Nazism, is accomplished with the same efficiency as has characterized our armed victories. Our task will require the utmost in moral and physical courage. We are coming into a country where the people have been schooled in deceit and treachery, where those in power have attempted to stamp out every manifestation of democracy. The passage of the front line does not mean that the Nazis have finished fighting by any means. The people of Germany have yet to show that they can live peaceably in a democratic world, a world dedicated to progress rather than the twisted ideologies of master race and world conquest. However, our military government will be based on justice without malice. This justice must be accompanied by efficient administration. We will wipe out Nazi tyranny and ideology. You must know your procedure and act correctly. This procedure must be emphasized by firmness. We can thus build toward a lasting peace for which we have sacrificed so much.
Uprooted German civilians such as these are one of the problems of the Allied military government in its mission to bring order and proper security to the rear of our armies. RAF Lancasters dropped 10,000 tons of bombs, 500,000 incendiaries, and also window to confuse enemy radar over the Rhine-Ruhr port of Duisburg in a 24-hour period. The assault continued through the night over the industrial town of Brunswick, which is one of Germany's greatest centers for aircraft and engineering production. The innocent, soft-looking puffs of black smoke are flak, and each puff could knock down a 4-engine bomber. These attacks are part of the present Allied offensive to disrupt communications and industry in Western Germany.